you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I will answer question 1, 2 and 20 together. The UK has been steadfast in our diplomatic support for Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, travelled to Kyiv on the 17th of June to meet once again with President Zelensky. They discussed the situation on the ground, and the Prime Minister announced a major training programme for the Ukrainian armed forces to help sustain them in their heroic defence of their people and their homeland. The United Kingdom will continue to strengthen the hand of our Ukrainian friends to finish the war on terms that President Zelensky has laid out.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend the Secretary of State, the Prime Minister and the entire team for all of their work on diplomacy in Ukraine. I think it's something that we can all be very, very proud of. I was very pleased to see that the leaders had discussed ending the blockade of grain in the south. Would the Minister be able to update the House on how those discussions went?
This House, and indeed the whole world, should be under no illusion. It is Russia that is blocking Ukraine's grain exports. They are doing so in an attempt to cripple Ukraine's economy and use hunger as political leverage. We support the United Nations' efforts to negotiate a safe corridor for exports by sea, and we're engaging internationally to call on Russia to end the blockade. Only Russia can lift this blockade. Ukraine's ports are vital for global food supplies, and we will keep supplying the weapons that they need to bring this war to a successful conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Sunday afternoon, I spent a couple of hours meeting with a Ukrainian family who have moved to the Worth Valley in my constituency under the Homes for Ukraine scheme. They are so incredibly grateful for the work that this government is doing, but they did reiterate that we cannot rest until full Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity is installed in Ukraine and Putin fails. So can my honourable friend therefore update the House on recent conversations he has had with global allies on how we can take a cooperative approach with international partners to make sure that this happens?
I thank my honourable friend and his community for hosting Ukrainian refugees, and I know that in, every corner of the House, praise is due for our constituents doing just that. I can assure him that my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, other ministers, both in the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and other government departments, as well as officials at every level, are engaging with our international friends and allies on this very issue. This will be raised at CHOGM, at the G7, at the G20, at the NATO meeting in Madrid, and I can assure him that the UK will not rest in our support of the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people, and we will not rest in advocating on their behalf with the international community.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What resources is the Department making available to Ukraine to assist them with prisoner of war swaps?
My honourable friend makes an incredibly important point, and with your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, I will reassert the position that the Ukrainian government has confirmed, that foreign nationals fighting as members of their armed forces must be treated as prisoners of war. This includes the British nationals captured by the Russian forces, and all prisoners of war should be treated in accordance with international humanitarian law, including the Geneva Convention. We will, of course, continue liaising with the Ukrainian government on the treatment of prisoners of war and any negotiations they might have with the Russian forces on this issue.
Can I thank the Minister for the responses he's given to other honourable members? We, as a House of Commons, stand united in the face of Russian aggression to the people of Ukraine. On that, can I ask the Minister sincerely what assistance the British government and NATO allies are giving to people and the government of Ukraine to tackle Russian disinformation?
The honourable gentleman makes an incredibly important point. When I speak with both my Ukrainian counterparts and others who are facing direct or indirect Russian aggression, they often bring up disinformation, they often bring up attacks by cyber. This is a theatre of war. The recently published last year, the integrated review recognises that. I can assure him that we will continue working closely with our friends and allies to counter disinformation and also to help them defend themselves against cyber attack as well as physical attack.
Speaker, all our hearts and support are with the people of Ukraine, but this conflict is impacting significantly worldwide, and particularly affected are the people in East Africa, where grain shortages have coincided with the most dangerous drought in 40 years, cuts to aid and COVID-19. Save the Children at Oxfam have reported that one person is dying of hunger every 48 seconds in Ethiopia, Kenya and Somalia. So will the Foreign Minister commit to front-loading future resilience funding to bring forward those funds now to prevent a famine?
The Honourable Lady makes an incredibly important point. And as I said in my earlier answer, it is clear that Vladimir Putin is using hunger in the global south as a weapon of war and as a point of leverage. It should be noted that the 25 million tonnes of grain currently stuck in Ukraine is equivalent to the yearly consumption of the least developed countries in the world. She is absolutely right that we focus on this. My right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, has said we will prioritise humanitarian response in future funding for our department, but I can assure her and the House that this will remain a priority for the government.
It's very clear, Mr. Speaker, that Putin is indeed using the starvation of the world's poorest people as a tool of war. As we seek to fight back against Putin and use all diplomatic powers, does the Minister agree that it will be easier to build a coalition against Putin across the developing world in particular, and of course morally right, if we restored the cuts in international aid or kept them?
The right honourable gentleman, I think, is conflating two fundamentally different issues. The world should be clear that it is Vladimir Putin alone that is creating these problems with his blockade of grain exports from Ukraine. He could turn the tap of food to the global south on tomorrow, and we demand that he does. We will continue working with our international partners, including the United Nations, to try and facilitate those grain exports, but the world should be clear. It is down to him and the Russian blockade of those Black Sea and Azov Sea ports that is creating that hunger, and he should be held accountable for it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I agree with much of what the Minister has had to say. Myself and the Shadow Foreign Secretary last week met with a delegation of Ukrainian MPs, and we've heard firsthand the devastating impact that Russia's actions are having on civilians across Ukraine and across that country as a result of their illegal actions. But can I bring the Minister back to a point I've raised a number of times with him? We have to stay the course with Ukraine in our support for them, and the whole world needs to stay the course with them. That's going to involve substantial costs. Can I ask him again, will he look again at the not only freezing of, but the seizure and repurposing of Russian assets to ensure that we can support humanitarian and reconstruction efforts in Ukraine?
Minister.
The honourable gentleman and I often disagree. It is the nature of being in different parties, but on this issue, he is absolutely right that there is unanimity of voice across the House. I can assure him we are looking at the issue that he raised about sieges and the repurposing of the value of those sieges. Nothing is off the table. The pain, the suffering that is being inflicted on the Ukrainian people by Putin and his faction must be paid for, and it must be paid for by them.
SNP spokesperson Almond Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd echo the comments that the FCDO staff and the diplomatic corps worldwide do a great job under difficult circumstances. But they're being undermined. They're being undermined by talk of politically motivated appointments at home, by job losses across the civil service as a whole, and by the 0.7% aid cut, which was a manifesto commitment now betrayed. Surely now is the time to reverse all of this talk and all of this support to actually support the civil servants doing tough jobs in tough times.
I thank him for the praise that he has given to our civil servants, both here in the UK and across the world. He is absolutely right. They are doing a fantastic job. I can assure him, my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, and my ministerial colleagues across government departments liaise with them regularly. They are highly focused, highly motivated, and are absolutely determined to help deliver the UK's government priority, which is to support the Ukrainian people, to support the people across the world who are being impacted by the food shortages that Vladimir Putin is creating, and they are doing so in a way that makes me and the whole House proud, and I have no doubt they will continue to do so.
Dr. Matthew Offord.
Mr. Speaker, the UK condemns in the strongest terms the targeting of civilians and regularly raises this issue with the government of Iran. We welcome the fact that those responsible for the plot against the conference in Paris in 2018 have been held to account, and the Belgian courts have convicted 4 individuals, including Assadollah Assadi, who received a 20-year sentence, and we continue working with the international community to ensure that all countries, including Iran, abide by international rules and norms.
Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to hide my disappointment in the answer. Assadollah Assadi orchestrated a planned terrorist attack on mainland Europe against what would have resulted in mass casualties, including 5 members of the British Parliament, including myself. At the Munich Security Conference earlier this year, the Iranian Foreign Minister, Hussein Amir Abdullah Al-Haim, met with his Belgian and Swedish counterparts for private talks, which included seeking a petition for the release of Assadi and others through prisoner swaps. It would be ironic that those of us that actually oppose the JCPOA could have been victims as the terrorists were using resources that came from the sanctions. So can I ask the Secretary of State again to meet with the Iranian counterpart to make it clear that any future JCPOA must ensure human rights in Iran, must ensure and relinquish terrorism activities across the region, including on the mainland of Europe?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not able to speculate on the context of bilateral talks between Iran and other countries. The UK's position is absolutely clear that the behaviour of Iran in a whole number of areas is unacceptable. We raise this regularly. I know my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, has raised our concerns about Iranian government's behaviour on numerous occasions. We will ensure that we continue to call upon the Iranian government to abide by international rules and laws and to respect human rights at every level, including the right of criticism on the international stage.